Today is Wednesday, April 16th of 2025. I'm Miles Harrison with my team here, and I'm excited to give our very first webinar actually for PRAKTIKAI with our PowerBI webinar. Edward Yash and I are coming at you here live from the PRAKTIKAI headquarters in downtown Toronto. And for the next hour, so we are going to talk a little bit about Power BI and business intelligence, and also go hands-on and see what we can do with it. Okay, so the agenda for this hour is the introduction, a little bit about who is speaking to you and what the company is about. We'll talk a little bit about Power BI if there are folks on the call for whom it's completely new. A little bit about good visualization practice. And then Yash is going to take us hands-on working with Power BI, and then hopefully there should be some time left at the end for questions and discussion. All right, so now we can all introduce ourselves. Hello again, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for coming. I'm Miles Harrison, right there, front and center. I'm the company principal of PRAKTIKAI, which is my data and AI consulting company, and we just very new, got going in January of this year, and I have experience both in education at BrainStation, which is a tech boot camp where I led the data science team globally across Vancouver, New York, Toronto, and London. And I also, prior to that, came from the consulting world in large companies, large well-known firms like Accenture and PwC, and also the agency world at Sapient before they were acquired by Publicis.
All right, I am Yash, and I'm the data and AI consultant for PRAKTIKAI. I've been working with, I would say, big data and ML AI for years now. Previously coming from the oil and gas industry, where I used it for data analytics as well as future prediction. I've worked with several multinational as well as national companies like Kuwait Energy, Schlumberger, Total, and amongst others.
Hello, I'm Edward Johnson. I'm also part of PRAKTIKAI as an AI strategy consultant. I have experience at all levels at various companies like Walmart, AIG, UBS, so across all markets, various sectors, up to the level of CTO. And in the last years, I have been working on projects to do with AI, new technologies, blockchain, and so on. So I've joined to help with the business and also, of course, seeing it from the other side of the customer as someone who would be buying services.
Okay, so now I will just quickly talk a little bit about the company and what we're about and my vision for the company. So PRAKTIKAI is a new type of consultancy. We're looking to drive value in businesses with data and AI without hype. And PRAKTIKAI, it has AI in it, but AI is not all we do. And it's actually a Greek word, and it is from praktikos. It is the Greek word that means practicality, and that is one of our core driving principles that will drive the work we do, how we work with clients, and the approach we take in the work that we do. So a little bit more about our core values here at the very top. As I said, obviously practicality is the core principle and core value of PRAKTIKAI. We believe in doing solutions that work. We believe in doing things pragmatically. And we're not going to do Gen AI just for the sake of doing Gen AI. We need to drive business value in the things we do and do them in a common sense way. Part of doing that and being pragmatic is having clarity in the things that you do. And by that, I mean clarity of communication. A lot of consulting work and technical work can sometimes be quite obtuse and difficult to communicate to people who are non-technical. I believe that if you do good work, you should be able to explain it in easily understandable terms to anyone. And if we don't take the time to do that, then the work is not really worth doing. We also believe strongly in excellence. And if anything is really worth doing, it is worth doing well. So the types of work that we want to do is going to be delivering the absolute best that we can. And if we don't feel that we can deliver the absolute best, then maybe that's a project for someone else. And then the final two values are around how we work with our clients and how we work together. I'm very, very big on authenticity and allowing people to be their best selves and who they are and how they work and how they interact with others, even in the workplace. And finally, work is all about the relationships, both between the people that are working together as well as with the clients we work with. And we seek to form very meaningful and close, lasting relationships with our clients and see the clients that we work with less as a customer and a client relationship, but more as working with them and being in the role of trusted advisors and colleagues. Okay, so now I'll talk a little bit about what Power BI is and why you should care, why you should use it. So Power BI, business intelligence software developed by Microsoft. So interactive visualization, building dashboards, things like that. There's other software that does this, but as I'll talk about in a sec, Power BI is really the leader in this space. And it's been around for quite some time. If you didn't know, Power BI was first announced by Microsoft more than a decade ago in 2013 and was released in 2015. And it grew out of extensions that were in Power Query and Power Pivot, which were extensions in Excel. And those extensions, as well as Power BI, are now developed into full product offerings that are integrated into the whole, what Microsoft calls Power Platform. Okay, so why Power BI? As I said, it's part of the Power Platform. It also integrates closely with all the different services that Microsoft has as part of O365 and Azure and things like that. As we'll see later in this webinar, you can actually do things like have Power BI integrate with PowerPoint or integrate with Microsoft Teams. Tableau used to be the industry leader according to Gartner in their Magic Quadrant quite some time ago, but Microsoft with Power BI rapidly overtook Tableau and has been consistently year over year the leader in business intelligence for quite some time. And that's why we're working with Power BI. And then finally, if you're familiar with Microsoft's Fabric framework, which is fairly new, their unifying framework for doing data and analytics on the cloud. Power BI is part of that framework, and you can do things like automation and storing data and data models in the Fabric as part of Microsoft Cloud. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about good data visualization practice, and this is not specific to Power BI. This is just doing the practice of visualization and business intelligence. So something that's a bit surprising to me is that sometimes you can visualize data without always thinking about it, but knowing how to think about data and in an abstract way actually is very, very important in terms of understanding the types of visualizations you should make and doing good data visualization practice. So there is categorical data, which most people know, which is different buckets or categories of ways to describe something. But there are actually two different types of categorical data. We have what's called nominal data, which is different categories, but those categories don't have an implied order. Okay, so if you have product categories, there's no sort of logical ordering to categories of products. Or if you have flavors of ice cream, strawberry, chocolate, vanilla, there's no sort of smallest to largest in these flavors. They're just mutually exclusive categories. Ordinal categorical data, on the other hand, does have an order, hence the name. So there's not a quantity associated with it, but you can put the different buckets in order. And the easiest example to think of is t-shirt sizes, small, medium, large, XL. Anyone can put those in order, but there's not necessarily the relationship quantitatively. We don't know whether medium is twice as large as a small or what have you. So there's order, but not quantity associated with it. For numeric data where we are working with quantity, you can have either interval data which is ranked values over a range that does not have a 0 point. All right, so take, for example, someone's weight. It doesn't make sense to talk about someone weighing 0 pounds or 0 kilograms, but you can still have weights that are greater than another weight that are all positive. Whereas ratio data does have a well-defined 0 point. So something like the temperature scale in Celsius, there's such a thing as 0 degrees Celsius, and that value is also defined over the whole real number line, at least down to absolute 0, right? So you can have negative temperature and you can have positive temperature. In Power BI, when you're working with these types of data, categorical data is referred to as columns, and numeric data are referred to as measures, and this is where you would have your KPIs. Okay, when we think about taking types of data and then encoding them visually, there's a number of different ways that you can encode data visually, and this is work that has come from a lot of research in the psychology of perception. So the different ways to encode quantity in visually, we have height, width, angle, area, shape, hue, shade, outline, and position. Some of these either cannot encode numeric values or do so poorly. For example, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to talk about encoding a quantity as a shape. So these are more suited to encoding categorical data. And something like angle obviously is in a pie chart and does encode quantity, but it's been shown from psychological research that people don't perceive that and are not able to judge that as quantity as well as some of the other types. So these encodings, width, area, and shade, are generally better perceived by folks as far as the research is concerned to judge quantity, but they're still problematic because something like area, if you make the area twice as large in width and height, then you're actually making the size of the area 4 times as large. So these ways of encoding quantity are still not ideal. The best way to encode quantity from the research is to either use height from a common baseline, which you'll see in something like a bar chart, or to use 2D position and use the position of different data points or different visual elements to encode quantity. People are better at judging quantity relatively with these types of visual encodings. Okay, and then furthermore, how you make design choices in your data visualizations also matter. And there's an example here we see in this figure. There's profit and loss, which are in blue and orange. And depending on how you choose the colors in the figures on the right, it actually flips the meaning of that combo chart to be profit and loss or loss and profit. Okay, so people make these associations almost like subconsciously, and these sorts of design choices are very important when you do business intelligence, visualization, dashboard design, things like that. All right. It's also worth noting, and you could probably watch a whole 1-hour webinar just on this topic, that choices of colors is important, and also that you need to have accessibility concerns about things like folks who have partial color blindness or full color blindness. In terms of doing the actual work of business intelligence on projects and things like that, I do just want to talk a little bit about scope creep. Scope is not just a mouthwash. In some cases, dashboards can grow quite beyond their original intent. And it's very important to have conversations at the beginning about why you're building particular business intelligence products and what function they are serving and what the requirements for them are. All right. And what you will find happens, and I've seen this, is after you start doing this visualization, people know you can do it. They'll get these requests come in, these burning fire requests from leadership or even middle management. And then they'll say, oh, can you just add this to this dashboard? And very quickly, this dashboard that originally had a particular purpose will now start to balloon and grow into something that's lost track of its original purpose. And this can be the case with data sources as well, right? Can we just pull in one more data source to this dashboard, even though originally it was only supposed to be a sales dashboard? You need to be assertive and gently push back in these cases. And in some cases, that means talking about what the actual ask is about and saying, hey, is this an ask that's better put a different visualization or even into a different business artifact or even into a presentation or something like that, because you don't want the scope of an individual piece of business intelligence work to start to balloon away from the original intent. Okay, and now I will pass things over to Yash to take us hands-on with Power BI.
Awesome. Thank you, Miles. All right, folks. So I am going to be showcasing Power BI as a toolkit over here. And let's just start with this slide here, where we're going to look at, when you open a Power BI page, what exactly are you going to see on there? Again, being part of the Microsoft package, the top section of it will have all of the ribbon with all of the tool sets that you need within there, as with Excel or any other Microsoft products. You can always share your data. You do, however, have some distinct differences. So now there are like 4 separate sections on the left-hand side where you can visualize your data in different ways. And I'll dive into this in a little bit more detail once I actually open Power BI later on. You have the central canvas. This is where all of your visualizations go. So, and for building those visualizations, you're going to be using these set of panes over here, which will be your data pane, visualization pane, and the filter pane. So using the data pane, you have all of the tables of data. You have the visualization pane, which allows you to not only select the visualization, but also format it in different ways, depending on your client's request or the best design practices, as Miles was saying. And finally, we have the filter pane, which allows you to filter different categories or different points of data sets onto each one of the visuals or on a page. Finally, we also have the status bar at the bottom, which is where you're going to have all of the different pages for the different visualizations you'll be making. So there could be a page specifically for the upper management, which is the overview page. You might have one for the sales department. You might have one for the operations department, which will each be a separate kind of deeper dive into the department specific visuals. I'm just going to step outside of Power BI over here and instead showcase the actual dashboard. Now here we have a dashboard where we are looking at sales and profit data from a superstore. This is a well-known data set from teaching data sets that are around. And we've created like an overview page where you can see the sales, the profit over certain sections of time. So I can use the slicer to change the time, and that is going to change the data appropriately. We are looking at sales and profit by different categories here. So be that the category of items being sold, the shipping modes, the segments or region. We're seeing the profit using these bars over here and these sales using the bar charts. We have temporal data being shown, using sales over here, a pie chart, which I'll get more into later. And then again, a filled map where, depending on the state that I'm clicking, it is going to filter the data for the rest of the visuals. So we're going to be using this Superstore data and starting from scratch. So I'm just going to go here and create a blank report and move this one over. The very first thing that you need to do, though, is load the data onto your Power BI. So you can do it using different ways, Excel being the most common one, which is why it has a workbook shortcut here. Or you can look at all of the different common data sources, as well as the uncommon ones, which you can see there is a lot of. So you can literally connect entire databases, be it on cloud or on-prem, and you can connect it to your dashboard. I'm going to go with the Excel workbook here and then load the Superstore dataset. Now, once you load the data, it is going to take each one of the tabs within your Excel and try and load it as a separate table in itself. So here we have 3 tables, which is the orders, people, and returns table. And if I was sure that the data is clean and I don't have to do any sort of changes to it, then I would go ahead and click on load. However, I can already see that over here, the column headers are not correct. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'll select these three data sources and then go on transform data, which is going to open this little window on the side. And as you can see, it applies certain steps every single time I make any changes. Now, the point of this is that every time I'm going to apply a step, apply a change, next time an updated report comes in with the same errors, it will automatically update using these steps with the new report. And that can save you a lot of time. So let's go to the returns table. The first thing I'll do is I will use first rows as headers. And now you can see they have the proper heading, as well as a step added on here that we have promoted the headers. We'll do the same for the people's table. Again, I know the data set, which is why I know the issues herein. However, as you get to know your data sets, you will know what sort of issues, or even once you do EDA, you're going to start getting the issues and you can start making these changes. Another thing I notice here is that the row ID is in a numerical data format. So these are the data formats on the left-hand side, and it shows it's a numerical data format. I want to change that to a text type because I don't want it to aggregate on an ID. That doesn't make any sense. So if I was looking for sum of all of my rows, having the ID column being aggregated does not make any sense. So I'm going to convert it to text. Similarly, I'm going to go down, check the other columns. Most of them are text. I can see that there are also numerical float columns using the 1.2 or the integer columns using the 1, 2, 3. And these all look all right. Another thing that looks slightly different here is that the order and ship date are loaded as numerical data. In this case, this is date time data. So again, I can just go here, change the date type to date. And here, now you can see it has that little calendar icon, which means that it is date time data, and it automatically recognizes the years, months, and days. Once this is done, I can go home and close and apply. And it's going to apply these changes to all of the columns and then load the data onto Power BI. So here I have all of the data sources within my data tab. So these are the three tables that I have. Now, I did mention that I'm going to showcase the other tabs on the side. So this is the report view where we're going to do visualizations later on. But before that, we can also look at the table view. And in the table view, you can see this is what it would look like on Excel. You can do similar things. You can filter data by the columns. You can visualize based on these filtrations and make any changes that you need to. And if you forgot to do any transformations, or during EDA, if you found out that there are other transformations you need to do, you can always come back here, select the column, and make any changes using these formatting tools. There's also the model view. This is where you're going to connect the different tables to each other, do the joins. You can see that it already connected the people to the orders table by itself by figuring out that there are two similar columns and it needs to connect them. If it hasn't connected something, I can just do a drag and drop. So I can drag the order ID, drop it onto the order ID here, that it's a one-to-many, it's a single cross-filter direction, and the data tables are now connected. Finally, we have the DAX view as well. This is a querying view. So if you've worked with SQL type language before, DAX is a similar type of language. It is built specifically for Power BI, but you can query your entire data using these queries within this section. We won't be jumping into this though. We are focusing on the basics today. So let's start building stuff out. The very first thing that we're going to do is we can build a little text box that shows what is the dashboard page about. In this case, this is an overview page. I'm going to copy that, give it as the tab name as well. And now anyone going through this page already knows that this is the overview. We can also start showcasing data using a data card. So let's say I wanted to show the sales data on here. I can just use the card icon and then click on sales, and you can see that it is showing a 2.3 million in sales. Again, this is a currency though, so technically this should be currency type. I can always go back to the table view, go to my sales column, and then change the format from just being basic numeric general data to currency data. And now you're going to see that it has added that $sign. Other things that you can do is you can, switch off these kind of weird category labels or rename them as well if you need to, or add specific titles. In this case, I will just call this sales, if I can spell it properly. There we go. And format it in the middle, right? Again, I'm not going to be doing this for each one of the visualizations, but now you know that you can, use separate titles for each one of the visualizations. All right. Moving on to something a little bit more, complex. So that will be your kind of clustered column charts, or what are known as bar charts. Let's say I want to visualize the sales over a period of time. Now, the amazing thing about Power BI is because I have the date time data, if I was to showcase sales over here, so I've selected the clustered column chart, I'm showcasing the sales. Once I have date time data, it will automatically create date hierarchies for you based on year, quarter, month, and day, if your data is clean. So there is some cleaning required there. I can also just drag and drop that over here, and it is automatically categorizing your data based on the different years. Now, we're going to follow some of the best practices for visualizations, one of them being data ink ratio, which is that you want to give the most amount of data with the least amount of ink possible. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm actually going to remove the x-axis over here and actually put the values right on top. If I want to format this visual, I select it. And instead of the build my visual, I'll go to format your visual tab, which is the one in the center. And I can go to the y-axis and switch off the values and switch off the title. And now those two are gone. But hey, how do you know what the value is? Well, there are data labels that you can add separately. So I'm going to switch on the data labels, and here you go. Here are the labels for each one. Now the 0.something million doesn't look the best, so I can actually go into a deeper dive and change the values to display the proper units, in this case being thousands. I'm going to switch off the decimal places, and now you can see that each one of these values are automatically available to you. You don't have to look at the axes every single time to see what the value is. Now, the amazing thing about the date hierarchy aspect of things is that you can drill down on date time data. Now, if I want to drill down, I can click the and let's say I want to look at everything within 2023. I click on 2023, and now it shows you that this is 2023, quarter 1, quarter 2, 3, and 4 with the different values. If I want to go further in, let's look at quarter 3, and even all the way down to the different days in August. So we have 2023, quarter 3, August, and all of the days, and how much profit was being made. If I want to drill out, I can drill out all the way. The other cool thing it does is it automatically aggregates data for you as well. If I don't click the drill down icon, I can just go down to the next level. And now this is the sum of all of the quarter ones throughout all of the years. And it is automatically aggregating it for you. Now, depending on your client need, you might have to switch on or off these different settings, or you might as well educate your client on using these settings themselves so they can do the drill down when they need to. Awesome. So this is our very first visual. Again, you would change the title, you would make those changes, but let's move on to the next one. Let's create a filled map over here. Why not? Again, the other amazing thing about Power BI that I really like is if it has country, city, state data, it will automatically try to geographically place. So in this case, we have state data. I'm going to put it in. And again, if there are any, let's say you're working with the UK as well as America, there are a lot of cities that share the same name. It will give you the opportunity to fix it using ISO codes or whatnot to fix that data or fix those errors if needed. In this case, there aren't any errors. So I have my state data over here, and let's try and visualize the sales using the state data. Now that didn't do too much, did it? You can see that it actually moved the sales to tooltips. What that means is if I hover over a state, it is going to give me that value. But this isn't as useful as it might be to actually showcase any sort of changes based on the sales in the different states. So what we can do is, instead of doing that, we are going to format this visual, go to fill colors, and do some conditional formatting. You can do that using a gradient if you have a large enough difference. Even within the gradient, you can have minimum, middle values, and maximum. Or you can have certain rules. In this case, I'm going to create rules based on the sum of sales. And let's say I'm going to add 3 different rules where the data is going to be separated by 30% to, or let's go with 0 to 30% first. So we have 0% to 30%. And that is going to be light blue. Then 30 to 60%, that is going to be, let's say, medium blue over here. And then finally, we have the 60 all the way to 100% being visualized with dark blue. And once I click OK on this, you can see that California and New York have the highest amount of sales, followed by Texas and Washington, which are in kind of middle levels, and then the rest of them don't have as high of a sales. Again, these design choices come with understanding your client requirements. We can create a slightly higher level of a cluster graph or a cluster and line chart as well. These are similar to the charts that we saw in the middle, where there are 2 separate pieces of information being shown. So we have the sales on top and the profit over here. So let's try and create that. For that, you can see, again, we have a line and stacked column chart or line and clustered column chart. I'll select the second for this one. And I am going to add the different regions in my x-axis. You can see it goes to the x-axis directly. I can add it either here or on the chart. So in this case, I'll add column y-axis being the sales, and then I'll add the line y-axis, which is my line chart, as the line y-axis, which is the profit. So you can see here that we have our profit and sales being shown together. Again, like, this might be a design choice that you go by. If this is what you prefer, that's great. I prefer having some sort of a distinction, and again, not having all of this excess ink on the side. So the first thing I'll do is I'm going to format it. I'm going to remove those values, remove those titles, and then also switch off the lines altogether. Now, where is my data? Well, instead of lines, I can show it as markers. And over here, I'm going to switch on the marker and then make it into a dashed line. Let's increase the size of it a little bit. And now I have my marker size. Let's also change the color of it to, let's say, yellow. So my marker kind of stands out a little bit. Again, we're talking about accessibility when we're making these design choices. So something that stands out a little bit. And then finally, the data labels. So I just switch on the data labels, and now I've got my profit and my sum on top. Now, you can see that the color for my sum of profit is different to the actual marker. So what I can do is go to my legend and switch off the match line color, and now this yellow matches the yellow. Finally, I do want these values to be in appropriate units. So I will go to my data labels, go to the value, and then make it in thousands. Again, switch off the excess points in there. And you know what, while I'm here, I can also specifically for profit, change the background color from being white to something like light yellow. So now when the light yellow label, it is specifically related to your yellow line. And these kind of small design choices actually make it easier for people to absorb the information. All right. While we're here, I also wanted to showcase why Miles was saying while encoding quantity, you shouldn't be using volume. So let's say I want to create a pie chart, and here is my pie chart. let's encode the same information here as we have within the sum of sales and sum of profit. So by region, we are going to look at the profit. And let's just add the sales as a tooltip over here. Now, this is exactly the same information that's being presented over here as is in this chart. And I don't know about you, but for me, trying to differentiate between the West and the East is quite difficult because I don't know which one is bigger. We've made it slightly easier by giving a percentage and values, but I would rather be able to immediately see which one is higher versus lower. So when you're making pie charts, try and use it for fewer number of segments. In this case, instead of, let's just use segment. And now I can tell that, okay, this is the biggest segment, this is the second biggest, and this is the smallest. If I'm not able to see such big differences, I would normally avoid using a pie chart. Either way, let's put this pie chart at the bottom. Now, the amazing thing that I really enjoy about Power BI is the able to filter different visuals based on other visuals. So one thing I can do is I can select California, and it's going to highlight, where the California is compared to the rest of the areas. Now over here, the West is the only one within there because California is in Western United States. All the others are highlighted out. However, it keeps coming back to that data ink ratio. I don't want to bombard the customer with that much ink. So instead of using highlights, what I can do is I can go to Format and Edit Interactions, select the visual I want to edit interactions with, and you can see that there are these two little icons that come up for all other interactions. And the first one is filter, the second one is highlight. By default, Power BI goes into highlight. I don't like that, but can't do much about it. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use filter for each one. And now when I select it, all of the other data is gone. It only shows you information for California at that point. However, for this edit interaction thing, you have to keep doing it for each visual. Now, if I go to this one, I'll have to change it for each one of them here. Instead, there is a little bit of a shortcut. You can go to File, Options and Settings, go to your Options, and at the report settings, you can change default visual interaction from cross-highlighting to cross-filtering. So you don't have to do it for each one of the visual every single time. And now, if I was to select anything, other than the main visual where I am doing the selection, all the others are not going to just show a highlight. They are going to show a filtration instead. The final thing I do want to show here is also the timeline that we created, and that is one of the easiest things you can do. So it's known as a slicer, and I can basically create a slicer over here, give it my date time hierarchy for be that the order date or the shipping date. In this case, I want it to be order date. I'm just going to pass that on here, and it automatically creates that filter for you. And you can see that if I look at the filters on this visual, it's going to say that the order date is the filter. Over here, sum of sales and state are the filters, and you can always know how the interactions are taking place with each other. Finally, whenever you're creating these dashboards, make sure that whenever you're placing things for different pages, they're always on the same section. So here is the final product. If I've created the date slicer over here in the first one, I'm going to make sure that I'm following that pattern for the other ones. And again, these two, the remaining two pages also show you the power of Power BI in that you can create different heat maps for your data. You can create, bubble charts if that's what's needed, and you can play around with it based on what your client wants. So with that, I am actually going to pass it back to Miles to speak further on the ways of publishing data with Power BI, as well as other features. And this is the little publish button that he'll be speaking about.
Okay, thanks very much, Yash. That was amazing. Okay, so using Power BI in enterprise or in your organization, Yash was showing you how to be in the role of a Power BI developer, but when you want to publish these things for other people to use, you can publish them to be viewed in the web browser, in an intranet or internet site by publishing to Power BI Spaces, which is part of Microsoft Fabric. So then anyone in your organization could go to that Power BI space or intranet site and view the dashboards. And this is where we talk about kind of self-serve visual analytics and people having self-serve data. There's also the Power BI mobile app. So you can install the app on your phone. And then if you're someone like a busy executive, you don't have time to look at these reports, you can just bring them up on your phone. And when you create a dashboard like this, you don't actually have to create a separate version of the mobile dashboard. Both visuals are in the same file. And in fact, Power BI can actually automatically generate what it thinks should be the best mobile version. So you could open these on your mobile and you don't have to do the work twice. And then finally, you can embed reports, as I said, either in a website, or you can even do things like embed them in Microsoft Teams to share with your team. And you can also even now embed them in PowerPoint. So here is the retail demo dashboard that Yash made, and you can see it is embedded directly in the presentation he is sharing in PowerPoint. And all the interactivity of Power BI is still functional there within PowerPoint. And if you want to give a presentation to an audience and do things like drill down and explore the data as part of the presentation, you are absolutely capable of doing that. Okay, so that will pretty much do it for all we're going through today, but we really have just scratched the surface of what Power BI can do. Lots of great resources out there if you like books as well as the web. Good resources specifically on Power BI, Learning Power BI by Jeremy Arnold, which is an O'Reilly book, and there's also the Microsoft Power BI cookbook. If you're just into data visualization practice, Dr. Edward Tufte is the original thought leader, the godfather of data visualization, and his book, The Visual Display of Quantitative Information, while quite old, is the most important text in data visualization practice. And then more from an applied side, Stephen Few is a thought leader in business intelligence, dashboarding, and applied data viz, and he has very good books with very, very practical advice about what to do and what not to do that I also highly recommend, and are also a couple of them sitting on the shelf here in the PRAKTIKAI office. Okay, and if you don't like paper books, there's lots of resources out there on the web. There's a list here of linked resources specifically from Microsoft, including the playground for Power BI analytics and some examples of different reports and a kind of gallery. And we can share these links later after the webinar. And that will pretty much conclude everything we're going through today to leave time for questions. So once again, thank you very much for coming to the webinar. I hope you learned something. And we will wrap things up here. If you want to learn more or talk more about business intelligence, you can check us out at practicai.com or on LinkedIn, or reach out via the email there. Okay, thanks very much for your time and attention.